Having just announced their new media rights deal with ESPN for their PLEs starting in 2026, WWE and ESPN went and decided, you know what? Why wait until next year? Why not just start next month? That was the big news this week. Not only did the new ESPN streaming service officially launch on Thursday, but the Peacock era is coming to an end with Clash in Paris at the end of this month. At least when it comes to main roster PLEs. NXT PLEs will continue airing on Peacock as planned. That's through March of 2026. In fact, NXT has one airing tomorrow night, Heatwave. You notice how they don't even brand them as NXT events anymore? It's just WWE now, WWE Heatwave. So this means that all main roster PLEs will be airing in the US exclusively on ESPN's new direct-to-consumer service, starting with a brand new PLE being added to the schedule on Saturday, September 20th. It's going to be running opposite AEW All Out. This was just a rumor last week, but it's all confirmed now. It will be WWE WrestlePalooza, kicking off the ESPN era. So the WrestleVotes report proved to be accurate. WrestlePalooza was the name of an old ECW pay-per-view that ran from 1995 to 2000, which plays off the name of the popular Lollapalooza music festival that started in 1991 and runs out of Chicago to this very day. In fact, it just concluded a few weeks ago. And yes, to those who have asked, it was also the name of the wrestling event where Bud Bundy had to wrestle King Kong Bundy to get initiated into the No Man group on an episode of Married with Children. That episode actually aired in October of 1995. The first ECW WrestlePalooza took place in August of that year. If you want to be technical about it, ECW did it first. But look, it could always be worse. They could do a show called Great Balls of Fire. I mean, I know that would never happen, right? Because that would be awful. Why the WrestlePalooza name? Especially when there was an independent promotion that was using the name and had trademarked it for the last decade. Why go through the hassle? Why go through the trouble of buying it away from them? Well, Tony Khan is an admitted mark for the old ECW, and they're running this show directly opposite the All Out pay-per-view. So it sure feels like someone in Stamford thought, hey, let's drive the knife even deeper and use an old ECW name just to rub salt in the wound. Because WWE would never be that petty. I mean, come on now, right? I mean, they wouldn't be that petty, would they? No, never. Of course not. So the show will take place at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, which means that Pat McAfee will be there, at least for one night. You know, him being an indie guy and all. Not that kind of indie guy, but you know what I mean. ESPN will also carry the two remaining PLEs for the year after that, which are Crown Jewel in October and Survivor Series in November. If you live outside the U.S., nothing changes for you. The shows will continue to air on Netflix internationally, so you don't have to worry about any of this. ESPN did not buy out Peacock's remaining rights. What happened is WWE worked things out with Peacock and then brought it to ESPN for approval. Because WWE felt that by splitting WrestleMania and SummerSlam into two nights over the last few years, and then adding the Evolution show last month, that they had already fulfilled their commitment to Peacock for whatever the number of shows was that they were contracted for. And that's very interesting. That would seem to imply that they only added the Evolution show because they knew that this deal with ESPN was in the works. So by adding it, and, you know, adding it the same weekend as AEW All In, that was just a little added bonus for them. But by adding that show to the calendar, they were able to speed things up so they could get the hell off Peacock that much quicker, which is very interesting. I mean, look, there's any number of reasons that you could look at for why they did Evolution after not doing another one for 7 or 8 years. But anybody who thinks that they just decided, hey, you know what? We really got to do another Evolution show now because, boy, the women are killing it, and we just got to do one of these. Like, I'm always looking for some ulterior motive, and I think we just found it. I think we just found what the ulterior motive was for them doing that show when they did. But as part of the deal that WWE worked out with them, Peacock will be getting new main roster programming, details of which will be revealed soon. Right now, we don't know what that means. So, I mean, that doesn't sound like documentaries, right? If they're talking about main roster programming. I mean, the last thing we need is more shows. So I'm curious what that ends up being. Now, for his part, on the Forbidden Door media call on Thursday, Tony Khan was asked about WWE running so many shows head-to-head with AEW, and he gave a very smart, very disciplined answer by not even addressing them, and instead saying that their focus is on AEW and continuing what he called their excellent year in 2025. And again, whether you agree with that statement or not is completely irrelevant. I thought that was exactly the answer that he should have given. That's all he needs to do is just focus on AEW and making it the best that it can possibly be. And when asked about what Mark Shapiro of TKO said, that pay-per-view was dead, it's a dead business, Tony said their pay-per-views this year have been successful and that he's looking forward to adding them to HBO Max. Now, they've been talking about AEW pay-per-views on HBO Max for almost a year now, and they have provided no updates on where things are as far as that's concerned. I have no idea what is taking so long or why it would be so difficult for Warner to have the infrastructure in place by now to support this. That's not even a Tony Khan issue or an AEW issue. They're basically at the mercy of Warner Brothers Discovery and HBO Max. Once they get their shit together, they can shift their pay-per-views over to HBO Max, but we've heard nothing new, and it's been almost a year. But WWE is going to load up that WrestlePalooza show. Brock Lesnar is likely going to wrestle his first match back on that show against John Cena. He's already been scheduled for SmackDown on September 12th and September 19th. That leads right into the show on September 20th. I'm thinking Cody Rhodes defends the WWE Championship that night against Drew McIntyre. All Out will probably have Copeland and Christian challenging for the AEW Tag Team titles. I could see Jon Moxley against Darby Allin. We don't know what Hangman Page or MJF are going to be doing. The rest of the card is anyone's guess. But All Out is typically one of their bigger shows of the year. And I'm sure that Tony will load it up regardless. But WWE is not trying to out-wrestle AEW. They're not trying to have the better matches that night. I mean, if they do, that's great. But that they're not doing it to dominate the wrestling ratings, the star ratings. They're doing it to dominate the conversation and steal all the headlines. And around Brock Lesnar's first match back alone, I mean, for better or worse, they're going to be stealing all the headlines that weekend. What I'll be doing that night, I haven't decided yet. But I'm going to review the show live that I think more people are going to be tuning in for. Let's see how the cards shape up first, and then we'll decide. I did put an early poll up on Twitter to gauge people's interest without knowing the cards yet, still very early, but just to gauge their interest on which show they plan on watching live that night. And WrestlePalooza won the vote, 58% to 42%. And that's with over 3,200 votes in. So that's a clear win for WWE, but not exactly a landslide. So let's see how the cards shape up. I don't even have free access to the ESPN service since they decided to launch this shit early. They still have no agreement with YouTube TV. So I may have to use my trusty ExpressVPN and watch it on Netflix until they do. I mean, yeah, look, I could pay the $29.99 a month, until they reach an agreement. It's not that big of a deal, but it's the principle of it. Like, just knowing that most people are probably watching this shit for free, because they have ESPN and they have a service that offers ESPN, so then you can get the service for free. And just knowing that most people are watching this shit for free, and I have to pay $30 to watch Brock Lesnar against John Cena, I feel like I'm being punished. Do I want to spend $30 to watch John Cena against Brock Lesnar? I don't know about that. Now, that wasn't the only news to come out of this. If you think WWE is getting out of the Peacock business and Peacock is getting out of the WWE business, think again. This week, the two sides announced a multi-year partnership to become the exclusive streaming home for Saturday night's main event, which will air live on Peacock 4 times a year through, I believe, 2029, which is when the NBC Universal deal for SmackDown expires. And even though there's already been 3 of them this year, we had a Saturday night's main event in January, we had one in May, we had one in July. So you would think there's only one left. But despite that, there are 2 more, with the first one taking place on November 1st from Salt Lake City, Utah, and the second one and final one of the year taking place on December 13th, and that will likely be in Boston. That will be the night of John Cena's retirement match. I don't think they've confirmed Boston yet as the location, but they have confirmed in the press release that will be John Cena's final match. No one is happier to hear that news than Tony Khan, because World's End is spared. There was talk of them maybe doing the show on December 27th, which is the night of AEW World's End on pay-per-view, so Tony is relieved right now. Bill Goldberg, on the other hand, he may be throwing furniture around somewhere and probably injuring himself. That John Cena will get to do his retirement on Peacock with no commercials like he had on NBC. And that's why I really like that decision. I mean, does it lose a little bit of luster by not airing live on NBC? Sure. But if it means fewer commercials and ad breaks mid-match, that instantly makes the show better. So I'm fine with that. But it also shows that NBC was not exactly thrilled with how the shows were performing, because if they were, there's no way that they would have taken them off NBC, at least not for John Cena's retirement match. You know, at least for that one, they would at least be simulcasting that shit, and they're not. And I think that's very telling. And also, you know, since they're losing the main roster PLEs, you know, they want to do what they can to keep people subscribed to Peacock. So how do you do that? You've got to offer them something exclusive that they can't get anywhere else. You know, by making the Saturday night's main event shows exclusive to Peacock, it's smart. And it also means that I have to keep the cock now. So, well played, WWE. Well played. So all of this is a lot to take in. There's been a lot of news. This is a flurry, a hurricane of news coming fast and furious these past few weeks. So it can be a lot to digest. The WWE archives are something I've been asked a lot about this week. I've been curious about it myself, but there are a lot of people that don't know what's going on, so they've been asking me. The classic content will continue to be available on Peacock through the end of this year. And unless they strike a deal with Peacock or someone else for the rights to the library, that means that as of January 1st, there are no more archives. They will no longer have a home. They're going to be disappearing 3 months earlier than expected. Now, I'm sure they're going to work something out before then. Maybe it'll migrate over to ESPN. But if they don't make a deal by then, we will no longer have access to that content until they do, outside of whatever they upload to the WWE Vault on YouTube. And honestly, I've been spending most of my time on there anyway when it comes to the classic stuff. I love the Vault. If they want to add more content to the Vault, I'm all in favor of it. But they still need to have that one central location where you can navigate through full episodes of whatever it is that you're looking for. And you can kind of do that with the playlists that they put together on the Vault channel, but it's not the same thing. You know, it's not the same layout as what the WWE Network was, or what Peacock is, or what it would be on Netflix. So hopefully they will land somewhere where they can store all of that, and not just store all of it, but continue uploading new content. You know, the reason that they slowed down on doing that, and they really don't update a lot of classic stuff anymore on there, is because the audience just isn't there for it. But I hope that they, at least for the people who are interested in that content, that they will start uploading more stuff. It's not like everything's on Peacock. There's a lot that's missing. And that they just sort of stopped, and they need to pick up with that. But I think they also need to just do a better job of advertising that it's available. And they don't do that because they just assume nobody's going to care. But if they at least put a little more effort into advertising the fact that, hey, you know, guess what? We've got this entire library of stuff. Here's some highlights of, you know, what happened this week, 25 years ago, 35 years ago. And, you know, almost like little bumpers coming in and out of commercial breaks on some of the shows, you know, that might go a long way. You know, it's sort of like out of sight, out of mind. And especially with newer fans, they may not even know that this stuff is there or be given a reason to care about it. So I'd like to see them ratchet, you know, that up when the content moves to wherever it's going to move to. But my fear is that it's just not important to them. You know, the real estate on television is just, it's too important for them to waste it on promoting the fact that you can get old episodes of primetime wrestling from 1988. And I get it, I understand it, but I just wish it wasn't like that.